As in Nicole, this Batman and Robin were part of the World War II Homefront effort. Do you guys remember Victory Gardens from World War One? I hope so. Okay, so what did you guys learn last week? And so you guys talked about the rise of dictatorship. You probably didn't talk about it that much, but you certainly read about it. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, totalitarian governments. You guys learned about how the war started in Europe. There was the whole idea of about appeasement, and Hitler was taking all those places. By the way, if you want to learn more about that, if you guys want a video on that, just let me know, put some comments down below, and I can make a video talking about the rise of the dictators and how Hitler started kind of breaking the Treaty of Versailles. And then finally, what was going on in the United States before that? How did FDR respond to all the things going on in Europe? So neutrality acts, cash carry, lend lease, and all that stuff. And then finally, Pearl Harbor happened. And again, if you guys want more information on any of that, just put some comments down below. I'll make a video for you guys. Okay. So once Pearl Harbor happens, we are in the war. And FDR said that America was going to be the arsenal of democracy. Arsenal means a place where you store weapons, and again, democracy, freedom, all of that stuff. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be fighting for freedom. And in the case of World War II, he's pretty accurate with that. We were fighting against totalitarian leadership. And so we wanted to stop that. So the first thing we have to do is build our military. The Selective Service Act, this is a draft in 1940. You guys, we talked about drafts before. 15 million men joined the armed services. A lot of those guys weren't drafted. A lot of people went and signed up. Reason being, if you signed up, you got to choose what branch of the military you wanted to be in. So let's just say you wanted to be in the Navy. So you might decide to enlist on your own so you can join the Navy instead of waiting to be drafted. But after Pearl Harbor, there was huge, tremendous amounts of numbers of people joining the military. Women in the military, 250,000 women. So it's a significant number of women. Most of the jobs they did would have been nursing, but of course administrators, kind of that paperwork piece. Every time a soldier is, stationed anywhere, given a raise, transferred to another place, there's paperwork that follows that. And that at that point in history, that's what women were limited to doing here in our military. Most people would have received a card like this, or men would have, and this is a registration card. You can see our friend's name here is Harry P. Morgan. If you guys were all in the classroom, I would say, hey, would Harry be a good soldier? And those of you guys looking very closely would say, probably not. He's 49. I don't think we want people in our army who are 49 years old. We want those 18 to 25-year-olds. You guys are much stronger than old guys like me. All right. So how do we get the soldiers what they need? And so FDR, almost in a continuation of the Great Depression style New Deal programs, creates the War Production Board. And this was really kind of crazy. He takes basically any factory that could make something that would benefit the military, and the government says, you guys are now making some sort of military item. So the most popular ones to talk about are the auto industry. So like Chevy is making airplanes, Ford is making tanks, Chrysler is making Jeeps, even firework factories. They're now going to be making bullets and things like that. So any factory that could be used to benefit the war effort, the War Production Board is going to grab a hold of them and say, hey, you guys are now doing this. So it was a really pretty major government takeover of business. Now, so many men, we saw that 13 million men are off fighting or in the military in some shape or form. So who's going to fill those jobs at home? And that's the women. So once again, the women are going to fill in those jobs and take on sort of the non-traditional roles that went in the factories that men had usually done. And this is where the famous Rosie the Riveter is going to come in. I don't know how well you guys can see this photo, but I always find it fascinating. You can see it's all women working. And I'm not sure if you can tell what these are, but they're actually nose cones of airplanes. I believe like a B-52 bomber, and there's just dozens of them. And you can see that the women are the ones producing them. So the women are literally making the airplanes in this case. Pretty crazy photo. All right. How do we pay for this? Well, it's going to cost a lot, 320 billion um, in 1940 dollars. What that is in today's dollars, I'm not sure. You can look it up on a calculator if you want to find out, an inflation calculator. Just like World War I, war bonds. Everybody's going to be encouraged to buy war bonds. We're basically giving our money to the government in order to support this war. And they were wildly popular, just like in World War I. And of course, the Revenue Act, taxes are going to go up. Most Americans are going to pay a pretty significant income tax. And quite honestly, they were much, much higher than the taxes are today. If you were a wealthy individual, you could be looking at more than 50% of your salary would be taxed at that point for income tax. So we certainly were not afraid to tax the wealthy during World War II. Here's some war bonds. That's what you would have seen these posters everywhere, just like World War I. And down here, you can see what an actual bond looks like. So it does kind of look like currency, but it doesn't act kind of the same way. You can't go to the store and give them a bond to buy a cup of coffee. It just wouldn't work. Just like World War I, we've got the propaganda. This is one of my favorite propaganda posters. You see the innocence of the children. You got the older brother kind of protecting the little brother. And of course, you can kind of make out the shadow of the swastika from the Nazis. And it says, don't let that shadow touch them, buy war bonds. So protect your children by giving money to the government. Oh my gosh. And this one is one of my all-time favorites. When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. So join a car sharing club today. What do you think we're trying to save on this one? This is not for a war bond, guys. This is to save gasoline. And so they wanted people to carpool. Today, you often hear about that, but that's because we don't want to have as much pollution. Back then, we needed the gasoline. So gasoline was very, very hard to get. And so they encouraged you to drive with someone else. If you drove alone, you were basically wasting gas. And if you're wasting gas, you might as well drive with Hitler. All right, rationing. Again, we talked about this in World War I. This is the limits on the amount of certain goods available to people. So there just wasn't as much stuff out there because the government needed to feed those 13 million individuals in the military. So they were going to the food suppliers and taking that food to them. And so therefore, there's just less on the shelves at stores. And so people were very limited in how much they were allowed to buy and the types of goods. Let's take a look at what those goods are. Meat, sugar, butter, coffee, gasoline, tires, all of those things were rationed. You could only get so much at a time. And I can't help thinking about rationing now. If any of you guys have been out to Wegmans, you've just seen empty shelves. And so I'm kind of like doing like flash month. Not that I lived in World War II, but I could imagine that's what it would have been like, and going to stores and seeing shelves that used to be full and now finding them empty. And of course, you guys remember Victory Gardens from World War I. Remember, this is only like 20 or so years later, so all this stuff is very familiar to Americans at the time. And so they were very quickly getting into the idea of they can grow their own food, they can can their own food and preserve it, and therefore that would be more food for the troops. So not only was it something that helped supply the troops, it also gave people a sense of patriotism, a sense that they were actually helping in the war effort. This is a ration book. And actually, I believe this one actually belonged to either my grandfather or my wife's grandfather. But check this out. If you guys broke your rations, if you cheated on that, look at the fines, $10,000 or 10 years in prison, So you had these coupons. Let me see if I have, so you would get these books. Inside these books would be coupons. And when you bought, let's say, hamburger meat, you could only buy like a pound. And so you had to pay for the pound with cash, but you also had these coupons, almost like tickets. It wasn't like a coupon that gave us a savings. It was a coupon that allowed you to buy the meat. And if you didn't have the coupon, they weren't allowed to sell it to you. And you see that, again, if they went and tried to sell that to you, or if you tried to, you're looking at a serious fine. So most people went along with the rules here. They did not break the rules too much. Another really cool photo here is you can see this is a rooftop in a city, and you can see that they had created all these gardens up here. So everybody's doing their part in World War II to try to do whatever they can for an Allied victory. All right, this is gonna be fun. We're gonna have we're gonna take a little mental break right now. And so I want you guys to see if you can match your teacher to their dog. All right, you ready for this? Here we go. Um, so up here is Miss Valentine. You see, she's been a little bored at home, and she changed her hairstyle. And of course, there's Mrs. Siesta. We all recognize her. And off to the right, that's me. I've started to do a burpee a day, so you can see it's really kind of paying off. And down here is Lucy, Murphy, and Watson. And so who does Lucy belong to? Is that Miss Valentine's dog? Is that my dog? Is that Mrs. Siesto's dog? Okay, let's give it a couple of seconds for you guys to guess. If you've been watching my videos, you know who my dog is. In fact, I think I even gave you the answer early on. Are you paying attention? All right, drum roll, here we go. Who is the real dog? There we go, folks. So Watson belongs to Miss Valentine. Lucy belongs to Mrs. Siesto. In fact, Lucy is the newest member of the Siesto family. And of course, that's Murphy. My red-eyed kids, you guys know about Murphy. All right, back to our learning. Ava's here with me, guys. You want to say hi, Ava?
Hi. Oh my gosh.
All right, let's talk about the role of women in World War II. I mentioned Rosie the Riveter before. She becomes sort of the fictional face of women in the workforce during World War II. Again, guys, we know women have been working throughout American history, so it's nothing new that that women are working. What's different in World War II is the type of factory work that women are doing. They're literally putting wings on planes, putting sort of the heavy lifting sort of work that would have been previously considered men's work. But clearly the women rise up, and, you know, without them, you know, what good is a soldier if he doesn't have any bullets in his gun, if he doesn't have a plane to fly? So that was really, really provided for by the women in America. And there it is, Rosie the Riveter, iconic image. And you guys got to understand, like, you've seen this in my classroom all year long, but for a woman to be portrayed like this in the 1940s was unheard of. Like, most women would have been portrayed as sort of glamorous homemakers in dresses, but here she is, she's wearing coveralls, she's got a bandana, she's flexing. That's kind of unladylike. I think today we maybe take it for granted, but that was a pretty serious change in American history right there, and how we looked at women. So yeah, there's Rosie. Everybody say hi to Rosie. Hi, Rosie. Okay. Actually, this picture here is supposedly the real Rosie the Riveter. I just don't think she looks anything like the other Rosie the Riveter, but hey, there's the real Rosie. And of course, we had African-American women working as well. And guys, that's going to wrap up our notes for now. Let me see if I can get out of the... And okay, my face is all there again. So guys, that's basically the gist right now. So you guys can watch that video as many times as you want. If you have questions, grade 8 kids, you know how to reach me. You can do it on email. You can send it right through Google Classroom. You guys could even ask questions right below in the comment section on this YouTube video. And remember your work, guys. And I hope everybody is well and everybody's safe. And guys, stay home. And we got to do all our part. In 20 years, your kids will be learning about this in their 8th grade social studies class. All right, guys, see ya.